Oh, me? You want me to shout higher? All right, hello, 6th hour. All right, welcome to Writers Week 32. Thank you, thank you. All right, happy Thursday. True story, I woke up many times last night already thinking it was the weekend, and according to my watch, that was like 28 times that I woke up. And usually, it's a sad reality to wake up 28 times to realize it's not the weekend. However, since it's Thursday of Writers Week, I actually was pretty happy that we had 2 more days of, glorious things to hear. So I want to start by thanking the people who make the Writers Week dream a reality. And first is the boosters. So thank you to the boosters for their generosity and support. Obviously, thank you to the English department and all the other departments that help us, the tech crew who makes things run seamlessly behind the scenes. Yes, yes. And then, of course, I know you guys don't like to clap for yourselves, but thank you to the wonderful audience and the students. Okay, so we've heard so many great stories this week, so I think we all know the power of a great story. We've heard stories of fiction, and we've heard stories of truth. But what happens when a story born of fiction becomes the believed truth? How do you go back and recover the truth, especially when it has dire consequences for the humans living the real lives of that fiction? That is the challenge Tonika Johnson and Maria Kriesen faced and continue to face when they do their very important work in Chicago. Tonika is a photographer, social justice artist, and lifelong resident of Chicago's South Side neighborhood of Inglewood. Her work seeks to reframe the narrative of South Side communities, aiming to peel back layers of fiction and inequity to reveal the truth, humanity, and beauty of a community and people who live just 36 miles away from here. She is also a 2025 MacArthur Foundation Genius Grant Award winner, and if you don't know what that is, it's a huge deal. Yes, thank you, Russ. Maria is a liberal arts and science distinguished professor of sociology at the University of Illinois at Chicago. She has spent decades teaching, researching, and writing. She has also co-authored books about residential segregation and racial attitudes. She co-authored one such book with Tonika that we have on sale here today, which is Don't Go, Stories of Segregation and How to Disrupt It. Tonika and Maria are living proof that change can start with something as simple as a greeting, a walk into a new neighborhood, and an open mind. It doesn't take billions of dollars or 10 years of legislation to create change. It just takes a human tapping into their humanity. And these are 2 really incredible humans that we have on stage today. So please join me in welcoming Tonika and Maria.
That was such a nice intro. Okay, well, I'm going to get right to it so we can have time for the participatory aspect later and some questions. So to give you an idea of what our book, Don't Go, is about, I'm going to start with a question. This question that I'm going to ask you pretty much set the foundation for the book that Maria and I did. And it really is the reason that I do the art and the work that I do to shift the narrative. So I'm going to ask you to be honest. Okay, all right. You all ready to be honest when I ask you this question? Okay, shaking your heads, yes, all right. I would like for you to raise your hand if you have heard or have been told that Chicago's South Side is dangerous and to don't go. Raise your hand. Raise them high. Keep them raised. Now everybody look around. That is everybody. Okay? That right there is the reason that I do the work that I do. Because that advice that you all received has impact. It is the reason people are afraid to visit my neighborhood, and it also has an economic impact. So just like you all have been told, don't go to the South Side, people who have businesses are also told that. And so to give you a little bit more of insight as to why I'm such a proud South Sider and resident of Inglewood neighborhood, I'm going to share a little bit of my folded map film, which is a project that I did about race and segregation. And this is just explaining my origin story so you can kind of see why I started to get passionate about this topic overall. And before I press play, can we dim the lights a little bit? Just a little bit so we can, have some color and contrast. Yes, a little more. Okay. Don't go to sleep, you all right? Don't do it. Oh, okay, there it is. Inglewood neighborhood. I want y'all to hear me say it. Hold on. I want y'all to hear me say I'm. Okay. Yeah. I know I'm being so. Okay, here we go. I'm from Southside Chicago, Inglewood neighborhood. I'm sure the words you've heard to describe Inglewood include black, dangerous, poor, gun violence. However, Inglewood is where I grew up and still live. Before I tell you about Folded Map, I'd like you to think about how you came to live in the neighborhood that you grew up in, or where you live now. What influenced your decision? Who did you talk to? And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to tell you how I came to live in Inglewood. It all started with my grandmother, Marilyn G. Tenney. She came to Chicago from down south in 1962, on the tail end of the Great Migration. She wanted a better life, to have a professional career. And she achieved it when she came to Chicago and got a job as an administrative assistant at the local Social Security office, what black folks would call a good government job. For 7 years, she saved her money while working at the Social Security office to purchase a beautiful two-flat brick building on 62nd and Loomis in Inglewood, the building that I would grow up in with my mom and my two uncles. My childhood was beautiful, unlike anything people would imagine in Inglewood. I played outside every day. I rode my bike with my friends. I met my first friends in life, one of them named Raymond. Him and I would go to the corner store every day for cookies, pickles, and chips. Even my grandmother's best friend, Miss Patterson, lived right next door. She had the same migration story. Every summer, Miss Patterson would make homemade ice cream and sell it to the kids for 25 cents. It was also on this block that I started high school. I started going to Lane Tech High School. And for those that don't know, it's a selective enrollment high school 15 miles north of Inglewood. And it's very diverse, with a student body of 4,000 students. But every day, I would have to be at the bus stop by 5:45 a.m. just to make it to school by 8 o'clock. And on that everyday commute, I would look out the window, listen to my Walkman, and notice how my neighborhood was very different from the neighborhood that my high school was in. And this was in 1993, so there was no GPS, no cell phone. If you wanted to go anywhere, you had to know the address. You had to know the streets. And so as I was on the train going to school, I would notice that my neighborhood had vacant lots. And the neighborhood that Lane Tech was in didn't have any. My neighborhood had hundreds of storefronts so many beauty supply stores, and I didn't see any up north. And I would always wonder, why is that? And there's also one detail that I paid extra attention to: the streets. I noticed that the streets were named the same in Inglewood and also 15 miles north in the neighborhood that my high school was in. Streets like Ashland, Paulina, Walcott, and Western. And even though those streets are named the same, they look completely different. But the real fun began once I got to school. I met kids who I felt were reflections of me, but from all over the city, from neighborhoods I had never even heard of. I had a friend named Steve Zhukevich. We had algebra class together, and we talked about hip hop every day. But his name was the first Polish name I had ever said. And then I met my first group of Latino friends from neighborhoods like Humboldt Park and Wicker Park, even back of the yards. And they were the ones that taught me the cultural difference between being Puerto Rican and Mexican. And they told me that I better not ever get it confused. Then I had my friends who are Asian, who taught me the difference between being Chinese and Korean, letting me know that all Chinese people don't speak Chinese. They speak Mandarin too. And then I met a group of friends who I thought were black like me, who lived on Chicago's north side. And then I would come to find out that they were first generation immigrants from countries like Belize, Panama, Jamaica, countries that I had never even heard of. And then there were the friends who were black like me, but from a whole nother side of the city, called the West Side. I didn't even know what the West Side was, and they specifically told me it's from Cicero to Laramie and Laramie on down. And then I had my friends who were Filipino. I mistakenly thought they were Latino, and they were the ones to tell me, no, we are not. This is what we did every day for 4 years, getting to know each other's culture, each other's neighborhoods. And at this time, hip hop was thriving in Chicago, so we went to hip hop parties all over Chicago, getting to know each other's neighborhoods. And we quickly learned that the way that you truly get to know a location is through your friendships, through your relationships. And what we also realized was how segregated Chicago is. This map that you're looking at is what Chicago's segregation looks like. Chicago is one of the most segregated cities in our country. And it's been that way since before my grandmother came. The blue that you see on this map, those are the neighborhoods that are predominantly black. The pink, purplish that you see, those are the neighborhoods that are predominantly white. And the orange that you see, those are the neighborhoods that are predominantly Latino. And the neon green that you see in the center of the map and speckled throughout the top, those are the neighborhoods that are predominantly Asian. And as I thought about my commute and how everything looked so different from the South Side compared to the North Side neighborhood that my high school was in, I came to realize that I was riding through Chicago's segregation. And that's when I started to understand the connection between race, geography, and Chicago's segregation. So now that you all, oh, thank you. That is the first 9 minutes of the 30-minute animated film about my previous project, Folded Map. And if you're interested in watching the rest, you can go on YouTube and Google me, and the full film should pop up. But the origin story is very important because, as you can see, it helps you understand why this topic and this issue is really why I'm really passionate about it. It's really sad that people get programmed to not visit and get to learn about an entire half of a city. And so our hope with this book is that you will have some tools and stories to help you all figure out how to continue to question stereotypes that people try to project onto you about other places. And so I'm going to pass it over to my friend and co-author, Dr. Maria Creason, so she can share with you her journey to becoming passionate about this topic.
So what you're going to find out when I tell you my background is that not only is my background very different, although Tonika and I have come to be very close friends and we have found many similarities, there are very many differences in our upbringing, but you'll also learn that I'm not the artist that can make a cool animated film with cool music. So mine, you're not going to break into applause when I'm done with my little story, but we're going to do it anyway. You can laugh at the pictures at a minimum. So in 1968, I was 2, and my family moved to Brookings, South Dakota. Brookings is very small. I think I was in middle school when the first McDonald's was built. There's 3 traffic lights that I could think of during my childhood in my town. And Brookings is also predominantly, overwhelmingly white. According to the 1970 census, when I was growing up there, of the 13,717 people living in Brookings, 3 were black. I had never met them. My schools were almost entirely white. Not only were there no black students in my 187 student graduating class in 1984, but there were none at all in the high school. The railroad tracks right behind our house accommodated freight trains that came through twice a day. There was no need for passenger trains, buses, cabs, or any public transportation in my town. This is decades and decades before Uber and Lyft, before the internet, to be honest. Yes, that's how old. We lived in a small ranch-style home on a tree-lined street. My 2 older brothers teased me relentlessly. The town had 2 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and a high school, all public. My brothers and I could probably have walked the 2 miles to our elementary school or the 1 mile to our high school, but we mostly didn't. My mom would drive us because mostly the weather in South Dakota is not conducive to walking. Lots of snow and ice and cold and heat and all that. I was not a rebel. I was a nerd, something Tonika and I share. One of my favorite things to do was lie on my bed and read books. I loved Laura Ingalls Wilder and Little House on the Prairie for obvious geographical reasons, but I hated Nancy Drew. She was way too serious. The Bobbsey Twins and Trixie Belden were more my style. I played clarinet in the band and our school's 2 musicals, Fiddler on the Roof and Man of La Mancha. I also played the saxophone in the marching bands and the jazz bands. I swam competitively and was a member of the theater crew. I played basketball and threw the shot put. I don't really remember when I first thought about what I thought about black people. The mother of one of my friends taught at a boarding school for Native Americans in a nearby town, and she was probably the first person to talk to me about concrete examples of racial inequity and social injustices. I'll always remember the first time she called me plucky. I thought maybe she was making fun of my physique. But when I got home, I looked up the word in the dictionary and was relieved to see that plucky means brave, feisty, and spirited, which did not seem at all true to me at the time, but I've tried to grow into the label. It wasn't until college as a sociology major that I probably first started to have any kind of organized ideas around race, and I remember that they tied back to my upbringing in South Dakota. What does race consciousness about black people look like in a town like Brookings? What does your race consciousness look like if you've grown up in a town like that? It was pretty clear to me what I was supposed to think about Native Americans, since we lived in South Dakota, home of 9 Indian reservations, including some of the largest in the country. Notably, though, none of the students in my schools were Native American. In fact, I'm pretty sure I never met a Native American person during my childhood. But that didn't stop us from having lots of problematic stereotypes. So fast forward, I'd have to say my career studying race, racial attitudes, and residential segregation was sparked by that kernel of a question about how race did or didn't play out in my little white town on the prairie. So I grew up in this context, small town, middle America. I graduated from Stanford University, earned a PhD in sociology from the University of Michigan, and have spent the last 25 years as a professor at the University of Illinois, Chicago. So all that credentials and training and stuff, I know how to conduct sophisticated surveys and interview studies to unpack racial attitudes and dissect the processes responsible for residential segregation. I published the book, Cycle of Segregation, that offered a new theory on why our cities are still so segregated. It won academic awards, and its ideas might even have trickled into the world of policies and practices. But what I'm most grateful for is that this book also indirectly introduced and was responsible for me getting to know Tonika Johnson. And my gratitude for that introduction comes from the fact that despite my academic accolades and accomplishments, I felt like something was missing. I was starting to worry that I was going to become a grumpy old professor. This was because as a sociology professor, I'm primarily focusing on the macro, on offering ideas about institutional and structural changes. And I started to feel at my point in my career that I wanted to do more to help people connect the dots between those big systemic structures that I was studying and their own lives. And then I met an artist, and that changed everything. I had the great good fortune and honor to meet Tonika, and she allowed me to play in her sandbox. And in doing so, and collaborating with her, I could start to see pathways for moving my sociological practice out of the ivory tower and into the streets and neighborhoods, and perhaps help shift people's perspectives and create personal breakthroughs that need to happen, because it's only if individuals make changes and see things differently that they group together to create the systemic changes that we need. So enter the Don't Go project. So you can read the book to find out the full story about how this project came to be. But what you need for today's presentation is that Don't Go is based on about 30 conversations Tonika and I had with Chicagoans, both lifelong residents and recent transplants, who had either been told not to go to the south and west sides, or who lived in the neighborhoods that people are told not to go to. They were men, women, younger, middle-aged, older, white, black, Latinx, biracial, immigrants, employed, unemployed, social workers, IT professionals, small business owners, piano tuners, artists, parents, and so forth. The gist of our interviews, the very sophisticated interview protocol that we presented as a sociologist was, you've been told don't go to the south or west sides. Tell us about that. It was really complicated. We had these amazing conversations. We were a black artist and a white sociologist having wide-ranging conversations with complete strangers about Chicago, segregation, and race on Zoom from April to August of 2020. We were hearing stories of fear of all kinds. We were learning about various don't go messengers. We were witnessing the harmful shortcuts our brains use and seeing the hurt they caused. And we were also seeing how healing could happen. Once we hit about 30 people, we realized that together these conversations could tell a compelling story of how the don't go message, the one that you all have heard, can perpetuate segregation. And it could be told through the stories of these people that we talk to who send, upend, and get hurt by them. And importantly, and optimistically, the stories could showcase everyday people like you, who can disrupt segregation in all kinds of everyday ways. And though we didn't know when we went into this, we just went in. It was the beginning stages of the pandemic. Everybody was at home. We were just depressed. And we said, let's just try to talk to these people. We don't know what we're going to do with it. We're just going to start talking to them. And we realized at the end we had to share their stories because they were so compelling. And we knew it had to be a book, so we wrote one. As a way to dive into the book, to get a little bit more into it, we want you to take a look at one of our storytellers, whose story you'll get to hear in a minute, Adrienne, who appeared on a WTTW, that's a public TV station in Chicago, Tonight program, after she participated in the interviews, and we'd done a little media work around the project, but before there was a book. And here's what she said about what it felt like talking to us and participating in the Don't Go project.
And Adrienne, since participating in this project, give us a quick sense of how you sort of participate in changing the narrative.
Since this project, I've gone to the South Side a few times. I've seen for myself that the things that, the don't go to the South Side narrative is not true, and I've been trying to unlearn that behavior. I have a storefront here on the North Side, and for a while I was inviting Black artists to come to my shop and show their work and sell their work so that they could see my neighborhood, but also so my neighbors could meet them and start to maybe form some relationships between North and South Side and break up the segregation and the narrative that has been so prominent in the city.
And Tanika, we're almost out of time, but obviously, and Adrienne.
So now that you have heard Adrienne's reflection, we think it's fitting that you actually hear a little bit of her story. So we are going to invite one of you all to come up for the participatory part of this to read Adrienne's story. So can we get a volunteer to come on down, and while you all are deciding who that will be, oh, we have one. Come on down. Can you all turn on mic 3? Yeah, you right there, waving your She's coming. Woo! Yep, you could read, and then she'll figure out if she wants to do the next one. All right. And what is your name? Christina.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. You can read Adrienne's story.
Shortly after I bought my new car when I was 17, I drove down to see my grandma, who lives in Beverly. I got off at the wrong exit. We didn't have Google Maps or anything like that, and I didn't know where I was, so I called my grandparents to ask for directions. They lost it. They said I was in a very dangerous place. They were so freaked out for me, and then I got freaked out too. So when I finally got to my grandparents' house, they were really mad, so I was really scared. Now I'm 34 years old, and I never ever gone to any place on the South Side other than my grandma's house. So I started to get off the highway in places I told to never ever go. It was not what I thought. It's just neighborhoods and nice homes. I was angry that I just blindly believed everything I was taught.
Let's give it up for Christina.
Yeah.
Because she's going to get a copy of the book, being the courageous first reader. Thank you. All right, we have another excerpt. It's a little long.
You don't have to look like...
Yeah, you don't have to look like... come on down in the red shirt. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. And I believe this is Emma. Emma's going to read Eva. Here you go. See, look, I still had this right here.
I think about growing up in a predominantly white suburb of Chicago and watching local news and Chicago-based TV channels. The crime reporting is so heavily focused on the South Side that I feel like the fear of these neighborhoods just slowly worms its way into your brain. I started a job in Englewood at a nonprofit at Kennedy King College when I was 21 years old. Even though I worked there in the middle of the day, my family, my friends, and even my peers were like, be careful and don't wear anything flashy. For a while, I have to admit I was scared to get on the CTA train, and the warnings made me second guess my decision to take this job. But after taking the train for just 1 week, it felt like business as usual. Obviously, nothing was happening. It was just regular living and going to work. Also, the people in Englewood were way friendlier than the people in my North Side neighborhood. After a while, the warnings started to annoy me. I wanted to say something like, when's the last time you were there, oh person who's warning me about this neighborhood you've probably never even been in.
Thank you. Let's give it up for Emma. And there's your book. Thank you. All right. I don't want you to see who's next. Let me just get Okay, how about this? Okay, now I'm confused. I'm gonna need the teachers to do it. I can't. No, you're not gonna be mad at me, so you gotta tell them. I'm gonna let them pick. I can't do it. All right. Yeah, I think how perfect. You're gonna read Tom, okay? And what's your name? Jill. Here you go, Jill.
When I was a kid, we mostly went to places on the north side. I remember the general
Let me see, which one?
ominous
Oh,
feeling
yeah, that's a crazy one.
as we would drive towards Comiskey Park on the south side for a Sox game. The comments about how the neighborhood got bad, I remember being like, oh my God, where are we going? As a child, I'm like, okay, I gotta keep my shit together. While we're on this place, so we'd park somewhere and just sort of rush in this little group to the park. We were probably holding hands, and at least while I was young, and all huddled together in a defensive little pack, rushing to safety. I remember we were going to Museum of Science and Industry, and we got off the interstate going west instead of east towards the museum. We ended up in some south side neighborhood instead of the museum campus. We saw only black people, and we drove through the neighborhood. And someone in the car said, "Lock your cars. Are the doors locked on the car? Avoid making eye contact."
Thank you. She's turning red. Thank you. All right. We're gonna pick, and then you pick whoever over there. You all do that because we have a couple more. So you, the one who keeps jumping up and down, you right there. Yes, I'm looking at you. Yes, you. And now look, you're gonna read Leslie, okay? Perfect. You were really excited to read this. Now, what's your name? Ashen?
Yeah, Ashe.
Ashe.
Ashe, like.
Ashe.
Yeah.
Oh, like Ashe.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Well, this is Leslie. You can use this mic, or you can.
When I got to Concordia University, Chicago in 2012, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm here. I'm in college. This is unreal to me. At college orientation, I mingled with a group of other late Latinx students from the north side. We had never met, and as soon as I said I grew up from Humboldt Park, I lived in Cicero. I categorized as an outsider, as a dangerous person from the hood. I didn't know this at the time, but my address told me how they should talk to me, about me, and at me. Another layer is to add on, if you talk about what schools you came from, I was looked at like a wild child from coming from Chicago public schools instead of private or charter schools. They were so surprised to learn that I had aced my math placement because it was complicated in what they thought they knew about CPS and the West Side. I just wanted to ask people, do you really want to know about me, or do you want to just confirm what you've been told about people like me?
Thank you, Oscar. Now you're gonna get a book.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Yes, yes. Now, this is the bar is high because you're gonna read my favorite story. I know. You sure you're ready for it? Okay. It's Jerry's story. All right.
I distinctly remember going to Englewood on the bus for the first time. I had a strong sense that I was this white dude on this bus of all black people. I had to get off the bus and stand at an intersection waiting for the next bus. You're not so worried about something happening to you on a bus, but a white dude standing on an intersection, I remember being like, okay, when they say this stuff happens, this is where it goes down. This is it. This is where it happens. Text mama and tell her you love her. But it turns out it's really uneventful. Eventually, I realized that black people on the bus weren't focused on me. They don't care. Part of whiteness seems to be that you think everybody gives a damn. Like you think that when you're in these spaces, black folks can't help but be like, oh, who is this guy? I wonder why he's here. But black people have their own lives. They don't care about why you're there. And they certainly don't care about you waiting for a bus. They don't care about you sitting on a bus. Seriously, you could write a Dr. Seuss book about this.
See why it's my favorite?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Cora.
Koya?
Cora.
Cora. Oh, well, now you get a book, Cora. You're welcome. Give it up for Cora again. Yeah, Cora! Our last reader was Cora. So sorry. We don't have any more. I'm so sorry. I thought you all might want to ask questions. So if you have a question, or if you would like to share some of what you're thinking about, or how about this? I ask you all a question. Why you want to read them? So why are you so excited? What is it about the stories that make you all eager to read? So that's a question you can answer. But I want to give you all a few seconds to think about your reflections that you might want to share, or if you have any questions for Maria and I about the process or anything about the book. This is your time to be able to share that. And I'm looking around. Question here. Yes. When do we start writing the book, or just writing in general? Oh, well, Maria is the book writer, okay? She had to convince me that this project could be a book. And I was like, cool, because it really didn't require as much writing for me, okay? Because we were interviewing people, and then since Maria had the bright idea to make it a book, she then had to turn these interviews into stories. So she did all the hard work when it comes to that. So you tell them, when did you start all of that?
After we finished the interviews. But here's the thing, Tonika would spend the entire time when we were starting to think about doing a book, and she'd say, oh, it's no problem, Maria knows how to write books. She's written books before. And she did. So I went along with it because I'm like, yeah, I want to write a book. I don't know how to write a book like this because this book is much more creative. Academic writing has a very specific formula, and I was really good at executing that formula. It's also why I'm a good baker, but not a very good cook. I can follow the directions in the formula, but I'm not so good at freelancing. So we did enlist the help of a creative writer who helped us take my ideas that were very linear and turn them into stories that you would want to read.
But again, we had the source material. You know, we had all of those interviews. So, any other questions? Yes. Yes. Who? Oh, ooh, that's a good question. Well, this is my first time writing a book, so I don't know if I don't know anything different. She wanted to know how is the process of writing a book with two people, because really it was more than two people. We had to include the storytellers. So I will give you one example of something that we had to figure out. We were writing or we were trying to make essays out of interviews. And then we were also, as you can see, trying to include it in a larger collection. And so one thing I remember us trying to figure out was the tense. Like, is it going to be first person? Is it going to be, like, how are we going to have the narration? How are we going to share our story? So that was something that we really had to figure out. Like, is it going to be first person, second person? So that was something that took us a while to get through.
And I will just say, and I'm sure that all of your English teachers tell you this, and I'm sure that most of you don't believe it, but there's like 1,000 drafts of this book on my folders. Draft 1, draft 17, draft 110. And in those drafts, we were revising the voice, the tense, the narration, all those things, but also the content. So the drafting there was a lot of drafting. But it was super fun to work with someone on that, because then you're not stuck in one voice, stuck in one framing, stuck in one idea of the 3 points we have to get across. So we would get together and talk about it. Mostly was the writing process, where we would get together and go for 5 hours talking about the content of the book.
Yes.
And if you guys, we're gonna like end in 10 seconds. So if you want to buy a book, if you want to ask another question, but give it up for.
Goes by so fast.